I was burning alive in our shared apartment, the fever melting my resolve, but the coldest thing in the room wasn't the winter draft. It was the man I was about to marry, laughing with his friend in the living room while I silently collapsed. If you love emotional and dramatic stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us create more amazing stories. Now, let's dive into the story. Part 1. The Invisible Fiancé. The heat started at the base of my neck, a slow, crawling warmth that I initially brushed off as exhaustion. By Tuesday evening, that warmth had blossomed into a raging inferno beneath my skin. Every joint in my body ached with a dull, throbbing rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I stood at the kitchen island, gripping the cool marble countertop so tightly my knuckles were white, trying to steady the violent spinning of the room. My name is Noah. For the last 3 years, I've shared this sprawling, modern apartment in downtown Chicago with Ethan, my fiancé. Once upon a time, he was the man who would cancel his meetings just because I had a bad day. Now, he was the man who couldn't even look up from his phone when I spoke to him. I closed my eyes, a wave of nausea washing over me, followed by a violent shiver that rattled my bones. I was so cold, yet I knew if someone touched my forehead, it would be like touching a hot stove. But there was no one to touch my forehead. Not really. From the living room, the booming, confident laugh of Ethan echoed against the high ceilings. He was with his best friend and business partner, Liam. They were going over the financials for an upcoming merger, a project that had consumed Ethan's life for the past 6 months. Noah. Ethan's voice snapped through the air, sharp and impatient, devoid of any warmth. Are those coffees coming or what? We have a lot of ground to cover tonight. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like it was lined with shattered glass. Coming, I rasped, though my voice barely carried over the soft hum of the refrigerator. I forced my trembling hands to pick up the 2 mugs of black coffee. The dark liquid sloshed dangerously near the rims, matching the unsteadiness of my steps. I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, navigating the short hallway to the living room as if it were a tightrope over a canyon. My vision blurred around the edges, dark spots dancing in my peripheral sight. I tried to blink them away, forcing a small, tight smile onto my face as I entered the room. Ethan was sprawled on the expensive leather sofa, his laptop balanced on his knees, his tailored shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked handsome, successful, and entirely untouchable. Liam sat in the armchair opposite him, a stack of folders in his lap. As I set the mugs down on the glass coffee table, my hand slipped slightly, and the ceramic clinked louder than intended. Ethan finally looked up, his brow furrowing in annoyance. "Watch the papers, Noah," he said, his tone biting. "These are originals." "Sorry," I whispered, stepping back. I wrapped my arms around my own torso, trying to suppress another violent shiver. Liam, however, looked up from his folders and frowned. His blue eyes scanned my face, pausing on my flushed cheeks and the beads of sweat gathering at my hairline. "Hey man," Liam said, his voice laced with sudden concern. "Are you all right? You look like you're about to pass out. You're completely flushed." For a fleeting second, my heart leaped. Someone noticed. Someone saw that I was suffering. I opened my mouth, perhaps to say that I felt terrible, that I needed to lie down, maybe even ask for a ride to urgent care. But Ethan didn't even glance my way. He kept his eyes glued to his laptop screen and scoffed. "He's fine, Liam. Noah's just being dramatic again. He's been complaining about a headache since yesterday. You know how he gets. A little sniffle, and suddenly it's the end of the world." The words felt like a physical slap. The tiny spark of hope in my chest extinguished instantly, replaced by a heavy, suffocating shame. Ethan's casual dismissal wasn't just cruel, it was a performance. He was showing Liam that my discomfort was an annoyance, a character flaw he had to tolerate. Liam hesitated, his gaze darting between Ethan and me. "I don't know, Ethan. He looks genuinely sick." "I'm fine," I interrupted quickly, my voice raspy. The last thing I wanted was to be the cause of an argument, or worse, give Ethan another reason to look at me with that deep, sighing disappointment he'd perfected over the last year. "Just a little tired. I'll let you guys work. Make sure my blue suit is pressed for tomorrow, all right?" Ethan added, still not looking at me. "The dry cleaner messed up the crease last time, so you'll need to fix it tonight." "Okay," I murmured. Instead of going to bed, I forced my heavy legs to carry me to the small laundry room at the back of the apartment. I plugged in the iron, my breath coming in short, painful gasps. When the iron hissed, radiating heat, It felt like it was mocking the fever already boiling inside me. My hands shook violently as I ran the hot metal over the expensive fabric of Ethan's suit. I was so dizzy I almost dropped the iron onto my own hand, catching it just in time. I was doing this because I wanted to be good. I wanted to prove I wasn't a burden. I wanted him to look at me with affection again, not irritation. When I finally finished, I hung the suit meticulously on the door frame, my vision swimming so badly the blue fabric looked like a crashing ocean wave. I staggered into our shared bedroom and closed the door softly, leaning against it as my legs finally gave out. I slid down the smooth wood to the plush carpet, curling my knees to my chest. A year ago, if I had so much as sneezed, Ethan would have been wrapping me in blankets and making me tea. But as his career skyrocketed, I became less of a partner and more of a prop. I was the obedient fiancé who kept the apartment clean, hosted the dinner parties, and smiled for his colleagues. My needs, my feelings, my health, they had all become inconvenient obstacles in his busy schedule. I dragged myself off the floor and collapsed onto the bed, burying my face in the pillows. My entire body was on fire, yet I was shivering so violently my teeth chattered. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The bright screen pierced my aching eyes. There were 2 missed messages from my older sister, Emma. Emma, hey kiddo, still coming to Sunday dinner? Mom is making your favorite. Emma Noah, you rarely ignore me. Everything okay with Ethan? I stared at the messages, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to type, Emma, I'm so sick. I can't breathe right. Ethan won't look at me. Please come get me. But a toxic mix of fear and embarrassment stopped me. If Emma knew the truth, she would storm over here. She never liked how dismissive Ethan had become. There would be a massive fight. Ethan would accuse me of embarrassing him in front of Liam, of bringing my family into our private business, of being a needy child. He had called me a burden once, during a bad argument 3 months ago. You act like a weight around my neck, Noah. Can't you just be easy for once? I couldn't bear to hear those words again. Not when I felt this weak. I'm fine, Em. Just caught up with chores. See you Sunday, I typed back, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the spelling right. I hit send and dropped the phone onto the mattress, feeling a profound, hollow loneliness settle in my chest, heavier than the sickness itself. Through the bedroom wall, I could hear the muffled sounds of Ethan and Liam's conversation. They were laughing now. The sound was rich and carefree. Ethan was happy. He was engaged, energized by his work, completely unbothered by the fact that the man he had promised to marry was lying just a few feet away, practically fading into nothing. I pulled the heavy duvet over my head, but it provided no comfort. My breathing was becoming shallow, each inhale sending a sharp, stabbing pain through my ribs. Was it just a flu? It felt like something much worse. My skin was so hot it felt like it was radiating its own terrible light. Hours blurred together in a feverish haze. The bedroom plunged into darkness as night fell over the city. I drifted in and out of consciousness, tormented by disjointed nightmares where Ethan was walking away from me into a thick fog, and no matter how loudly I screamed his name, no sound came out of my throat. Around midnight, I heard the bedroom door open. The soft glow of the hallway light spilled across the bed. Ethan walked in, loosening his tie. I kept my eyes half closed, pretending to be asleep, afraid that if I showed how much pain I was in, he would just sigh and turn away. He moved around the room, changing into his pajamas. He didn't come to my side of the bed. He didn't check to see if my face was still flushed. He didn't ask if I was feeling any better. The mattress dipped as he climbed in on his side, turning his back to me immediately. Within minutes, his breathing evened out. He was asleep. I lay there, staring at the broad line of his shoulders in the dark. The man I loved was right next to me, but the distance between us felt like an endless ocean. The physical agony in my chest was excruciating, but it paled in comparison to the realization that was slowly breaking my heart. If I died tonight, quietly, right next to him, how long would it take for him to even notice? A fresh wave of dizziness hit me, so intense that the dark room spun violently. I needed water. I needed medicine. I needed help. But as I tried to push myself up on my elbows, my arms gave out completely. I gasped, a pathetic, weak sound that was swallowed by the heavy silence of the room. The burning in my veins reached a terrifying peak, and black spots swarmed my vision, entirely blotting out the faint moonlight. I was entirely alone, and everything was fading to black. End of Part 1. Part 2, A Shattered Morning. When consciousness finally returned, it didn't come peacefully. It dragged me back violently, pulling me from the dark, heavy void into a reality that consisted entirely of pain. My eyelids felt as though they had been glued shut with sand. When I finally managed to force them open, the dim, gray morning light filtering through the bedroom blinds felt like staring directly into the sun. I squeezed my eyes shut again, a low, pathetic groan escaping my cracked lips. Every single muscle in my body screamed in protest at the slightest movement. The fever had completely taken over during the night. My clothes were soaked in a cold, clammy sweat, clinging uncomfortably to my trembling skin, yet I felt as though I was buried under a mountain of ice. My chest heaved with shallow, rapid breaths, and each inhale scraped against my throat like raw sandpaper. From the other side of the bedroom, I heard the sharp, frantic rustling of fabric and the heavy thud of footsteps. Ethan. I turned my head an inch on the sweat-drenched pillow, the movement sending a sickening wave of vertigo through my skull. Ethan was standing in front of the full-length mirror, aggressively pulling the collar of his crisp white shirt. He reached for the blue suit I had pressed the night before, the suit I had nearly collapsed trying to iron. He didn't even glance at me. He just slipped it on, checking his reflection with a scowl. "I can't believe you didn't wake me up." Ethan's voice cut through the quiet room, sharp and laced with irritation. He wasn't talking to me to see how I was. He was talking at me, tossing a silver tie onto the dresser in frustration. My alarm didn't go off. "You know how important this meeting is, Noah. You usually have coffee ready by now. What is wrong with you today?" I opened my mouth to speak, to tell him that I couldn't breathe properly, that I thought I was dying, but my voice was completely gone. All that came out was a dry, ragged wheeze. I tried to push myself up on my elbows, desperate to make him look at me, to make him see the terrible state I was in. "Don't ignore me," Ethan snapped, turning around. His eyes finally landed on my curled, shivering form beneath the tangled duvet. For a split second, I prayed that the sight of my pale, sweat-slicked face and dark, sunken eyes would shatter his frustration. I prayed he would drop his briefcase, rush to the bed, and hold me. Instead, his jaw tightened. He let out a harsh, exasperated sigh, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Unbelievable. You're seriously still playing this up? I have the biggest merger of my career happening in 2 hours, and you decide today is the day you're going to throw a tantrum and stay in bed." "Ethan," I managed to croak, the single word tearing at my vocal cords. "Please. Help. Stop it, Noah." "Just stop," he interrupted, his voice dropping into that dangerously cold register he used when he was done dealing with me. He walked over to the bed, but he didn't reach out to touch my forehead. He didn't offer a glass of water. He just stood over me, a looming figure of immaculate tailoring and utter indifference. "I don't have the time or the patience for your dramatics this morning. You have a cold. Take an aspirin. Grow up. I need you to be an adult, not a child." He turned on his heel and walked toward the door. "Liam and I will be working late at the office tonight to finalize the contracts. Don't wait up. And please, try to pull yourself together before I get back. This apartment is a mess." The heavy oak door slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed in the empty room like a gunshot. A moment later, I heard the distinct click of the front door locking. He was gone. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes, hot and stinging, mixing with the cold sweat on my face. The betrayal was a physical ache in my chest, competing with the agonizing tightness of the illness. I lay there in the deafening silence of the apartment, staring at the ceiling, utterly paralyzed by the realization of my own insignificance in his life. There was a time, not so long ago, when Ethan used to look at me like I was the only person in the crowded room. I remembered a rainy Tuesday during our first year together. I had come down with a mild stomach bug, nothing serious. Ethan had panicked. He had skipped a crucial board meeting, driven to 3 different stores to find my favorite ginger ale, and sat on the bathroom floor with me for hours, rubbing my back and whispering that I was going to be okay. He used to kiss my forehead and tell me I was his world. Where had that man gone? How had the warm, fiercely protective man I fell in love with morphed into this cold, corporate stranger who couldn't even bear to look at me while I was burning alive in our bed? The realization was crushing. I had spent the last year slowly folding myself into a smaller, quieter version of myself, trying not to be an inconvenience, trying to fit perfectly into the sleek, unblemished life he was building. But in doing so, I had lost myself, and I had lost him anyway. An hour passed. Or maybe it was 3. Time had lost its meaning, melting into a surreal, feverish blur. My mouth was so dry that my tongue felt swollen and useless. Dehydration was setting in rapidly. My heart was fluttering in my chest like a trapped bird, beating too fast, too erratically. I need water. The thought broke through the haze of misery. If I don't drink something, I'm going to pass out again, and this time, I might not wake up. Summoning a reserve of energy I didn't know I possessed, I pushed the heavy duvet off my body. The cool air of the apartment hit my sweat-soaked clothes, sending violent convulsions racking through my frame. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my bare feet touching the cold hardwood floor. I tried to stand. My knees immediately buckled. I crashed to the floor, my shoulders slamming hard against the nightstand. The lamp wobbled dangerously but stayed upright. I lay on the floor, gasping for air, tears of pure frustration and agony streaming down my face. I couldn't walk. I was too weak. But the desperate, primal instinct to survive pushed me forward. If I couldn't walk, I would crawl. I dragged myself out of the bedroom, my fingers gripping the doorframe to pull my dead weight into the hallway. The apartment, usually a beautiful, sunlit sanctuary, felt like a sprawling, impossible desert. The distance to the kitchen seemed to stretch on for miles. Every movement sent a fresh wave of nausea rolling through my stomach. The edges of my vision were completely dark now, narrowing the world down to the sleek, gray floorboards in front of my face. Just to the kitchen, I whispered to myself, a frantic, broken mantra. Just get to the sink. I finally reached the kitchen island, the cold marble cool against my burning skin. I reached up blindly, my trembling fingers scrambling over the countertop until they brushed against the glass pitcher we kept near the sink. I gripped the handle, trying to pull it toward me, but my hands were shaking too violently. The heavy glass pitcher slipped from my weak grasp. It hit the floor with a deafening crash, exploding into 1,000 glittering shards. The cold water splashed across my legs and pooled on the tiles. I stared at the broken glass, completely defeated. My last ounce of strength vanished. I collapsed onto the floor, curling into a tight ball just inches away from the jagged shards. The cold water soaked into my clothes, but it brought no relief, only a deeper, bone-chilling cold. I closed my eyes, too exhausted to cry anymore, too broken to care. I just wanted the pain to stop. I was ready to let the darkness take me entirely. Then, the sound of the front door unlocking echoed through the quiet apartment. I couldn't move my head to look. I heard the door click open, followed by the heavy thud of expensive leather shoes on the hardwood floor. "Ethan? Man, you left the confidential files on the coffee table," a voice called out. It wasn't Ethan. It was Liam. His footsteps moved toward the living room, paused, and then shifted. He must have seen the trail I had left, or heard my shallow, ragged breathing. The footsteps suddenly quickened, turning into a frantic sprint toward the kitchen. "Noah." Liam's voice rang out, sharp with sudden panic. He rounded the corner of the kitchen island and stopped dead in his tracks. Through my half-opened eyes, I saw him drop the thick stack of files he was carrying. They scattered across the floor, forgotten. "Oh my God. Noah." Liam dropped to his knees right beside me, completely ignoring the broken glass that crunched beneath him. His large, warm hands gently gripped my shoulders, turning me over so he could see my face. As soon as his fingers brushed my skin, he hissed violently, recoiling for a fraction of a second before pressing the back of his hand firmly against my cheek and forehead. "You're burning up," Liam breathed, his blue eyes wide with pure, unfiltered terror. "You're literally burning up. Noah, hey, look at me. Can you hear me?" I tried to nod, but all I could manage was a weak flutter of my eyelashes. "Jesus Christ," Liam muttered, his voice shaking. He wasn't the calm, collected businessman anymore. He was frantic. He carefully slipped his arms under my knees and my back, lifting me off the cold, wet floor as easily as if I weighed nothing at all. He held me tightly against his chest, away from the broken glass. His heart was pounding steadily against my ear, a strong, grounding rhythm that cut through my delirium. The contrast between Ethan's cold dismissal and Liam's desperate, immediate care was jarring. It broke whatever fragile wall I had left protecting my heart. Liam carried me quickly back to the bedroom, laying me down gently on the bed, ignoring the damp sheets. He didn't pull away in disgust. Instead, he pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, dialing a number. "Ethan," Liam snapped the moment the call connected, his voice trembling with a rage I had never heard from him before. "Where the hell are you?" From the speaker, Ethan's voice was tinny and annoyed. "I'm pulling into the parking garage at the office. Did you grab the files?" I told you not to bother Noah. He's in a mood today. He's not in a mood, Ethan. Liam roared, the sheer volume making me flinch. He is unconscious on the kitchen floor. He has a fever so high he's delirious. What the hell is wrong with you? How did you leave him like this? There was a pause on the other end of the line. For a second, I thought Ethan might finally understand. I thought he might turn the car around. Liam, calm down, Ethan sighed, the irritation thick in his voice. He probably just fainted because he didn't eat breakfast. Give him some water. I need you at this meeting. We're presenting in an hour. Don't let his dramatics derail this for us. I closed my eyes, a single, silent tear escaping and rolling down into my hairline. He really didn't care. If I died, he would only be annoyed at the inconvenience. Liam stared at the phone in his hand, his expression twisting from panic into a look of absolute, profound disgust. He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just hung up the phone, tossing it onto the bed. He turned back to me, his hands gently framing my face, his thumbs wiping away the sweat and tears. His eyes were fierce, protective, and filled with a warmth that made my breaking heart stutter. I'm taking you to the hospital right now, Liam said softly, his voice a steady anchor in my swirling nightmare. I've got you, Noah. I swear to God I've got you. End of part 2. Part 3, the breaking point. The world outside the car window was nothing more than a smeared, chaotic streak of gray clouds and flashing traffic lights. I was slumped in the passenger seat of Liam's sleek sedan, my head resting heavily against the cool glass. The luxurious leather interior felt alien against my sweat-soaked clothes. Every bump in the road sent a shockwave of agony through my frail body, causing me to let out pathetic, involuntary whimpers that I was too weak to suppress. Hold on, Noah. We're almost there. Just stay with me, okay? Keep your eyes open. Liam's voice was tight, strained with a panic I had never associated with him. I managed to peel my heavy eyelids apart just enough to look at him. Liam's knuckles were bone-white as he gripped the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tightly a muscle ticked violently in his cheek. He was weaving through the dense Chicago traffic with reckless precision, his thumb continuously pressing down on the horn to part the sea of cars. This was Liam, the calm, calculated strategist of their firm, the man who never raised his voice in a boardroom, completely coming undone because of me. The meeting. I rasped, my throat feeling like it was coated in ash. You're missing the merger. Liam slammed his hand against the steering wheel, a sharp, angry sound that made me flinch. Screw the meeting, Noah. Screw the merger, and right now screw Ethan. Look at you. You're burning alive. Do you honestly think I care about a PowerPoint presentation when you're literally collapsing? His words hit me harder than the fever. For 3 years, Ethan had conditioned me to believe that their company was the center of the universe. I was taught that my needs always came second, third, or even last behind conference calls, networking dinners, and profit margins. Yet here was Liam, the co-founder, tossing the biggest deal of their careers out the window without a second thought, just to get me to a hospital. The tires screeched loudly as Liam aggressively pulled into the emergency drop-off zone of Chicago General Hospital. He didn't even bother putting the car in a proper parking spot. He threw it into park, left the engine running, and practically tore my door open. Before I could even attempt to move my useless legs, Liam's strong arms were under me again. He lifted me from the seat, cradling me against his chest. I buried my face in his shoulder, inhaling the faint, grounding scent of cedarwood and expensive cologne that lingered on his suit. I need some help out here. Liam roared the moment the automatic glass doors slid open. The sheer volume and authority in his voice instantly commanded the chaotic emergency room. He's burning up. He passed out, and his fever is out of control. The next few minutes were a terrifying, disorienting blur of bright fluorescent lights, shouting medical staff, and the squeak of rubber wheels on linoleum. I was transferred from Liam's warm arms onto a stiff, cold gurney. Nurses surrounded me like a swarm of bees, their voices overlapping in a barrage of rapid-fire questions. "Sir, we need you to step back," a stern nurse told Liam, pushing him away from the gurney. "I'm not going anywhere," Liam growled, his hand reaching out to grab mine. His grip was fierce, anchoring me to reality as the world spun wildly out of control. "I'm staying right here." "His temperature is 104.2, another nurse announced, her tone suddenly shifting to high alert. "BP is crashing. He's severely dehydrated. Let's get 2 lines started, stat. Push fluids and broad-spectrum antibiotics. We need a blood panel now." A sharp pinch in my arm was followed by the strange, cold sensation of liquid flooding my veins. A doctor appeared above me, shining a blinding penlight into my eyes. He asked me questions, my name, what day it was, how long I had been sick, but my brain couldn't process the words fast enough to form an answer. 3 days. Liam answered for me from somewhere just outside my field of vision. He's been complaining of a severe headache and fever for 3 days. His fiancé ignored it. The venom in Liam's voice when he said the word fiancé was unmistakable. If you had waited another 6 hours, he would have been in full septic shock, the doctor said grimly, and the words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. We're admitting him immediately. The darkness finally rose up to claim me, pulling me under, but this time, it wasn't a terrifying descent into nothingness. Because the last thing I felt before I slipped away was Liam's thumb gently stroking the back of my hand, a silent promise that I wasn't alone anymore. When I finally drifted back to consciousness, the agonizing, crushing weight on my chest had lifted slightly. The fire in my veins had been reduced to a dull, manageable ache. I slowly blinked my eyes open. The room was quiet, save for the rhythmic, steady beep-beep-beep of the heart monitor next to my bed. The lights were dimmed, casting a soft, blue hue over the stark white hospital walls. I turned my head, the movement slow and sluggish from the heavy medication pumping through the four in the back of my hand. Sitting in an uncomfortable, rigid plastic chair beside the bed was Liam. He looked terrible, and yet I couldn't tear my eyes away from him. His expensive tailored jacket was discarded on the floor. His silver tie was pulled loose, and the top 3 buttons of his shirt were undone. He was leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his face buried in his hands. He looked utterly exhausted. Liam. My voice was barely a whisper, weak and raspy, but in the quiet room, it sounded incredibly loud. Liam's head snapped up instantly. The raw relief that washed over his exhausted features made my breath hitch. He surged to his feet, closing the small distance between us in half a step. He hovered over the bed, his hands hovering as if he wanted to touch me but was afraid I might break. "Hey," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Hey, you're awake. Don't try to sit up. Just stay still. How are you feeling?" "Thirsty," I whispered. He immediately reached for the small plastic cup of iced chips on the rolling table, carefully feeding me a small spoonful. The cold water was the best thing I had ever tasted. I swallowed, wincing slightly as it passed my sore throat. "Thank you," I breathed, letting my eyes flutter shut for a moment. "What time is it?" "It's just past 4 in the afternoon," Liam said, pulling his chair closer, so his knees brushed against the edge of the mattress. "You've been out for a few hours. The doctor said you have a severe viral infection that spread because it went untreated. You were severely dehydrated. They're going to keep you here for at least 2 days to monitor you. For in the afternoon. The merger meeting was supposed to be at noon." "You missed it," I said, a wave of guilt washing over me. "The biggest deal of the year. Ethan must be." "Don't," Liam interrupted, his tone hardening instantly. He reached out, his large, warm hand gently covering my cold fingers where they rested on the blanket. "Do not worry about the meeting. Do not worry about Ethan. The only thing you need to focus on is getting better." "But he's going to be so angry," I murmured, a conditioned reflex of fear tightening my chest. As if on cue, Liam's phone, which was resting on the bedside table, began to violently vibrate. The screen illuminated the dark room, flashing a picture of Ethan. Liam stared at the phone, his jaw locking tight. He didn't reach for it. He just let it buzz, a relentless, angry mechanical sound that filled the quiet room. Finally, it stopped. A second later, it started ringing again. "Answer it," I whispered, turning my face away, unable to look at the screen. "He won't stop." Liam let out a slow, furious breath. He picked up the phone and swiped the screen, but he didn't put it to his ear. Instead, he pressed the speaker button and set it back on the table, allowing me to hear every word. "Where the hell are you?" Ethan's voice exploded from the small speaker, so loud and full of venom that I physically flinched. I just had to stand in front of the board of directors and look like an absolute idiot because my partner decided to vanish with all the financial projections. "The deal is on life support, Liam. Did you just throw away 2 years of work because Noah threw a tantrum?" Silence stretched in the hospital room. Liam didn't say a word. He just sat there, looking at me. His eyes were tracing the dark circles under my eyes, the pale, sickly hue of my skin, the tubes taped to my arms. "Are you even listening to me?" Ethan screamed. "I'm going to kill him." I swear to God, I am so sick of him acting like a needy child. When I get home, I'm packing his bags. I'm done with this. You tell him that. I am done. Tears, hot and fast, spilled over my eyelashes and tracked down my cheeks into my hair. It hurt. Hearing the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, discard me so violently over a business meeting felt like a physical knife twisting in my gut. But beneath the profound pain, something else began to stir, a tiny, fragile spark of realization. Liam leaned forward, his face close to the phone, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm, deadly register. "You're done?" Liam asked softly. "Yes, I'm done," Ethan yelled. "Good," Liam said, his eyes never leaving mine. "Because he almost died today, Ethan. The doctor said if I had listened to you, if I had left him on that floor, he would be dead. And you know what the sickest part is? I think you wouldn't have cared, as long as the merger went through." "Liam, don't be dramatic." "I'm dissolving the partnership," Liam interrupted, his voice ringing with absolute finality. There was a stunned, breathless silence on the other end of the line. "What?" Ethan finally gasped, all the anger suddenly drained, replaced by shock. "Liam, you can't be serious. We built this firm together. You're my best friend. I was your partner. But I don't know who the hell you are anymore," Liam said coldly. "And as for Noah, don't bother going to the apartment. You're not packing his bags. Because you are never getting near him again. Do not call this number again, Ethan." Liam reached out and ended the call. The silence rushed back into the room, heavier than before. He didn't take his eyes off me. He reached out, his thumb gently catching a tear that was falling down my cheek. His touch was so tender, so completely contrary to the violence of the phone call, that it made my chest ache in an entirely new way. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," Liam whispered, his voice thick with regret. "But you needed to know. You needed to hear who he really is." "Why did you do that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You gave up everything. Your company. Your best friend. Why?" Liam moved closer, his hand sliding from my cheek to softly cup the back of my head, his fingers tangling lightly in my damp hair. The sheer intensity in his striking blue eyes pinned me to the mattress, making my breath catch in my throat. "Because the moment I saw you lying on that floor," Liam murmured, his face inches from mine, "I realized I've been letting the wrong man hold you for the last 3 years. And I'm not making that mistake again." Before I could even process the weight of his confession, the heavy hospital door burst open. "Noah." My sister Emma stood in the doorway, her hair a wild mess, her makeup smeared with tears. She took one look at me hooked up to the machines and let out a broken sob, rushing across the room to throw her arms around me as best as she could without disturbing the IVs. "I came as soon as Liam texted me," she cried into my shoulder. She pulled back, her eyes flashing with a familiar, dangerous fire. "Where is he? Where is Ethan? I swear to God I'm going to rip his head off." "He's not here, Em," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in days. I looked past my sister, my eyes finding Liam, who had stepped back to give us space, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, watching me with that fierce, protective gaze. I looked down at my left hand. The heavy platinum engagement ring Ethan had given me 2 years ago felt like a lead weight around my finger. Slowly, painfully, I reached over with my right hand and slid the metal off my skin. I placed it onto the bedside table. It landed with a hollow, meaningless clink. "He's not here," I repeated, looking back at Liam, my heart suddenly beating a frantic, terrifying, beautiful new rhythm against my bruised ribs. "And he's never going to be." End of Part 3. Part 4, The Ashes of Us. The next 48 hours in the hospital blurred into a quiet, heavily medicated sanctuary. The relentless, burning fever that had nearly claimed my life slowly retreated, leaving behind a profound, hollow exhaustion in my bones. But for the first time in over a year, I didn't feel the crushing weight of anxiety pressing down on my chest. I didn't have to monitor the volume of my breathing, apologize for coughing, or shrink myself into the corner of the room to avoid being an inconvenience. Instead, I was surrounded by a fiercely protective wall built entirely by my sister, Emma, and Liam. True to his word, Liam never left. The nurses had tried to politely kick him out when visiting hours ended the first night, but Liam had simply leveled the poor head nurse with a look so chillingly authoritative, yet quietly desperate, that she had miraculously found a loophole in the hospital policy. He spent the nights folded into the horribly uncomfortable plastic chair beside my bed, his long legs stretched out, his head resting near my hip. Every time I stirred, Every time a monitor beeped a little too loudly, Liam was awake. He was there to hand me iced chips, to adjust my pillows, or to simply let his large, warm hand swallow mine until I drifted back to sleep. The man who was supposed to be running a multi-million-dollar corporate merger was instead keeping track of my medication schedule with the exact same ruthless precision. On the morning of my scheduled discharge, the crisp winter sunlight poured through the hospital window, casting a warm golden glow over the sterile white blankets. I was sitting up, my breathing finally clear, though my body felt as fragile as spun glass. Emma was bustling around the room, angrily throwing the ruined, sweat-stained clothes I had been wearing when Liam brought me into a biohazard bag. "I'm burning these," she muttered darkly. "And then I'm going to go to that pristine, soulless museum of an apartment you shared with that sociopath, and I am packing everything you own. You are moving into my guest room. End of discussion." "Emma, you don't have to do all that today," I said, my voice still carrying a raspy edge. "I can just—" "Noah, if you finish that sentence with go back and get it myself to make it easier for Ethan, I will personally hook you back up to that for," Emma threatened, though her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. She walked over and gently pressed a kiss to my forehead. "You are done making things easy for a man who made your life a living hell." The hospital door swung open, and Liam walked in. He had left for exactly 1 hour to go back to his own penthouse to shower and change. He looked breathtaking. He was dressed in dark denim and a thick, charcoal-gray cashmere sweater that hugged his broad shoulders. He held a paper bag from a high-end boutique in one hand and 2 steaming cups of coffee in the other. The moment his striking blue eyes locked onto mine, the air in the room seemed to shift, growing thick and electrically charged. The memory of his confession, "I realized I've been letting the wrong man hold you for the last 3 years," flared in my mind, sending a sudden, traitorous flush of heat to my cheeks. We hadn't talked about it. I had been too weak, and he had been too focused on my survival. But the words hung between us, a brilliant, terrifying promise waiting in the wings. "Good morning," Liam said, his voice a low, smooth rumble that sent a shiver down my spine. He handed a coffee to Emma and set the paper bag at the foot of my bed. "The doctor just signed your release papers. You're officially paroled." "Thank God," I sighed, looking at the bag. "What's that?" "You can't exactly walk out of here in a hospital gown, and Emma condemned your other clothes to the incinerator," Liam said, a small, genuine smile playing on his lips. "So, I took a guess on your sizes. I hope you don't mind." Emma smirked, taking her coffee. "I'm going to go track down the nurse for your final prescriptions. Take your time getting dressed." She shot Liam a look that was equal parts warning and absolute approval before slipping out the door. Suddenly, the room felt incredibly small. Liam stepped closer to the bed, reaching into the bag. He pulled out a pair of soft, fleece-lined sweatpants and an oversized, heavy-knit sweater in a deep navy blue. "Do you need help?" Liam asked softly. There was no pity in his voice, only a quiet, steady devotion that made my throat tight. "I know you're still weak." "I think I can manage," I murmured, though my hands were shaking slightly as I reached for the clothes. Liam didn't back away. He stayed right beside the bed, standing guard as I slowly, painfully stripped off the hospital gown and pulled on the sweatpants. Getting the sweater over my head, however, required lifting my arms, which pulled agonizingly at the bruised skin where the IVs had been. I let out a sharp hiss of pain, my arms freezing halfway up. "Hey, easy," Liam murmured. His hands were instantly there, warm and firm. He gently took the hem of the sweater from my shaking fingers. "Let me." I nodded, my breath hitching as Liam carefully guided the soft fabric over my head and down my torso, his knuckles brushing lightly against the bare skin of my waist. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a shockwave of electricity straight to my core. I looked up, and I was suddenly trapped in his gaze. He was standing so close I could smell the sharp, clean scent of his soap and the lingering aroma of the coffee. His eyes dropped to my lips for a fraction of a second before slowly rising back to meet mine. The silence was deafening, heavy with everything we were not saying. "You look beautiful," Liam whispered, his voice rough. My breath completely vanished. I opened my mouth to speak, to ask him if he really meant what he had said 2 days ago, but the sound of the door clicking open broke the spell. Liam stepped back, clearing his throat just as Emma walked back in with a stack of papers. "All right, the chariot awaits," Emma said, oblivious to the heavy tension she had just walked into. "Let's get you out of this nightmare." The journey to the hospital lobby felt like a victory march. I was seated in a wheelchair, hospital policy. With Emma pushing me and Liam walking a step ahead, his broad shoulders clearing a path through the crowded corridors. For the first time in a year, I felt safe. I felt like I belonged to myself again. But the universe wasn't ready to let me walk away that easily. As the elevator doors opened to the main lobby, Liam stopped dead in his tracks. His entire body went rigid, his hands balling into tight fists at his sides. I leaned forward to look around him, and my blood ran ice cold. Standing near the automatic sliding doors, pacing frantically with a phone glued to his ear, was Ethan. He looked entirely unraveled. His tie was missing, his designer shirt was wrinkled, and there were dark, frantic bags under his eyes. This wasn't the collected, arrogant man who had left me to die on the floor. This was a man whose world was actively collapsing. Ethan snapped his phone shut as he spotted us. His eyes locked onto me in the wheelchair, and a mix of furious anger and desperate relief twisted his handsome features. "Noah!" Ethan practically shouted, ignoring the stares of the hospital staff as he marched toward us. Before Ethan could get within 10 feet, Liam stepped forward, placing his large frame directly between Ethan and my wheelchair. It was a physical barrier made of pure, lethal intimidation. "Take one more step toward him, Ethan, and I will have security drag you out of here by your hair," Liam warned, his voice dangerously low, carrying a lethal promise. Ethan stopped, his face flushing dark red. "Get out of my way, Liam. This is my fiancé. He is coming home with me right now. You have done enough damage. Do you have any idea what you've done to the firm? The merger is falling apart because you went MIA. I don't give a damn about the firm," Liam sneered, stepping even closer to Ethan, towering over him. "And he is not your fiancé anymore. Didn't you notice the ring missing from the bedside table? Or were you too busy trying to save your precious deal to even visit the room?" Ethan's eyes darted past Liam, locking onto me. "Noah, stop this right now. Stop this pathetic game. You're making a scene. I had to work. You know how important this week was. Tell this psychotic traitor to move so we can go home and stop acting like a dramatic child." A year ago, that tone would have made me shrink. It would have made me apologize, stand up on shaking legs, and follow him to the car with my head bowed just to keep the peace. But I wasn't that Noah anymore. The fever had burned that weak, accommodating boy away. I put my hands on the armrests of the wheelchair and forced myself to stand. My legs wobbled, but Liam's hand instantly shot out behind his back, gripping my hip to steady me. The warmth of his touch gave me the anchor I needed. "I'm not making a scene, Ethan," I said, my voice shockingly steady, ringing clearly through the quiet lobby. "I'm leaving. You can't leave me." Ethan snapped, taking a half step forward before Liam's chest physically blocked him. "You have nothing without me. You live in my apartment. We're getting married." "No, we're not," I replied, looking directly into the eyes of the man I used to love. "You didn't want a partner, Ethan. You wanted a pet. You wanted someone to press your suits and stay silent when you were busy. You let me nearly die on your kitchen floor because my illness was an inconvenience to your schedule. You don't love me. You love how easy I made your life." "Noah, please," Ethan started, his voice cracking, the anger finally fracturing into genuine panic as he realized his manipulation wasn't working. "Emma is packing my things today," I continued, cutting him off completely. "Do not contact me. Do not text me. If you come near me again, Liam won't be the only one you have to worry about." Ethan stood paralyzed, his mouth opening and closing as he stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time in months. But it was too late. "Let's go," I whispered, leaning slightly against Liam. Liam didn't break eye contact with Ethan. "If you try to follow us," Liam said softly, "I will ensure that not a single firm in Chicago ever does business with you again. You are dead to me." Liam turned, his arm wrapping securely around my waist, supporting my weight as we walked out the automatic glass doors and into the crisp, biting winter air. Emma followed closely behind, practically vibrating with fierce pride. When Liam finally helped me into the passenger seat of his car, the adrenaline faded, leaving me trembling violently. Liam didn't start the engine. He closed the door, walked around to the driver's side, and climbed in. The moment the doors shut, enclosing us in the quiet sanctuary of the car, Liam reached across the console. He took my shaking face in both of his large hands, his thumbs gently sweeping across my cheekbones. His eyes were blazing with a fierce, possessive heat that completely took my breath away. "You were incredible," Liam whispered, his forehead dropping to rest gently against mine. "You are never going to be afraid of him again. I've got you. I've got you. I closed my eyes, leaning into the warmth of his hands, and for the first time in my life, I believed it. End of Part 4. Part 5, The Safe Haven. The drive to my sister's apartment was a silent, surreal journey. The heavy, pressurized atmosphere that usually accompanied any car ride with Ethan was completely absent. Instead, the inside of Liam's car felt like a protective bubble, insulated from the bitter Chicago winter and the chaotic wreckage of my past life. Liam drove with one hand firmly on the steering wheel, while his other hand rested on the center console, his fingers lightly intertwined with mine. It was a simple, grounding touch, but it sent constant, reassuring shockwaves straight to my bruised heart. Emma's apartment was located in a charming, older brownstone in Lincoln Park. It was the exact opposite of the cold, minimalist glass box I had shared with Ethan. Emma's place was bursting with color, filled with plush velvet armchairs, overflowing bookshelves, and the permanent, comforting scent of vanilla candles and worn leather. By the time Liam put the car in park, the adrenaline that had fueled my confrontation with Ethan at the hospital had completely evaporated. I was left with a heavy, bone-deep exhaustion that made my limbs feel like lead. I unbuckled my seatbelt, but before I could even reach for the door handle, Liam was already there, opening the door and bending down. "Don't even think about walking up those steps," Liam said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Before I could protest, he slid one arm under my knees and the other around my back, lifting me effortlessly into his chest. I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck, burying my face into the soft wool of his charcoal sweater. He carried me up the 3 flights of stairs to Emma's apartment as if I weighed nothing at all. I could feel the steady, powerful rhythm of his heartbeat against my chest, a stark contrast to my own weak, fluttering pulse. Emma had rushed ahead to unlock the door, throwing it open and gesturing toward the guest bedroom. "In here. The bed is already made with fresh sheets." I turned the radiator up so it's nice and warm. Liam carried me into the cozy room, the walls painted a soothing, deep sage green, and gently laid me down on the thick duvet. He didn't just drop me and step away. He hovered over me, carefully taking off my shoes and pulling the heavy blankets up over my chest, tucking them in around my shoulders. His blue eyes scanned my face, searching for any sign of discomfort or a returning fever. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly, his thumb gently brushing a stray lock of hair off my forehead. "Are you dizzy? Do you need water?" "I'm okay," I whispered, the sheer relief of being in a safe place washing over me. "Just really, really tired." "Then sleep," Liam commanded gently, sitting on the very edge of the mattress. "Emma is going to head over to Ethan's place to pack up your essentials before he gets back from whatever damage control he's trying to do at the office. I'm going to stay right here." "You don't have to stay, Liam," I said, though my hand instinctively reached out from under the covers to grip his wrist, betraying my own words. "You have your own life. You have a company to figure out. I don't want to be a burden." The word slipped out before I could stop it, a conditioned reflex from 3 years of being told I was exactly that. Liam's expression darkened instantly, a flash of pure, protective anger crossing his features. He shifted closer, catching my hand and bringing it up to his lips, pressing a firm, warm kiss to my knuckles. "Listen to me, Noah," Liam said, his voice a low, intense rumble that vibrated right through me. "You have never been a burden. Not to Emma, and absolutely never to me. The fact that he made you feel that way is a sin I will never forgive him for. My company, I can rebuild it. My schedule, it belongs to you now. There is nowhere else on this earth I would rather be than right here, making sure you are safe." A choked sob escaped my throat. The dam I had built to hold back my emotions for the last year finally shattered. The tears came hot and fast, blinding me. I wasn't crying because I missed Ethan, or because I was sad about the engagement ending. I was crying because I was mourning the years I had wasted making myself small, and I was overwhelmed by the terrifying, beautiful realization of what it felt like to be truly cherished. Liam didn't hesitate. He kicked off his shoes, climbed onto the bed, and carefully pulled me into his arms, mindful of the bruises on my arms from the 4 lines. He pressed my head against his chest, wrapping his strong arms securely around me. He didn't tell me to stop crying. He didn't call me dramatic. He just held me, gently rocking me back and forth, pressing soft kisses into my hair while murmuring words of comfort until my tears finally ran dry and exhaustion pulled me into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke up, the room was bathed in the dim, golden light of early evening. The apartment was quiet, filled with the faint, mouth-watering smell of chicken broth and garlic. I shifted under the blankets, realizing I was alone in the bed, though the indentation next to me was still warm. I slowly sat up, my muscles still aching but noticeably stronger than they had been in days. I pushed the door open and padded softly into the living room in my socks. Liam and Emma were standing in the kitchen. On the floor of the living room were 4 large cardboard boxes, hastily taped shut. Emma was furiously chopping vegetables, while Liam was leaning against the counter, his arms crossed over his chest, his jaw set in a tight, angry line. "He is completely unhinged," Emma was saying, her voice trembling with leftover adrenaline. "When I got to the apartment, he was already there. He must have left the hospital and gone straight home." I froze in the hallway, my heart skipping a beat. "What happened?" I asked, my voice slightly raspy. Liam and Emma both spun around. Liam was at my side in an instant, his hands gently gripping my waist to steady me. "You should be resting," he chastised softly, though his eyes were warm as he looked at me. "I'm okay. Please tell me," I insisted, looking at my sister. "Did he try to stop you?" Emma sighed, putting down the knife and wiping her hands on a towel. "It was like walking into a hurricane, Noah. He was throwing things. He smashed that expensive crystal vase you bought him for his birthday against the wall. When I started packing your clothes, he stood in the doorway and screamed that you had no right to take anything, that he bought that life for you." A cold shiver ran down my spine. The image of Ethan, always so tightly controlled, so obsessed with appearances, losing his temper to the point of breaking things was terrifying. "Then he threatened me," Emma continued, her eyes narrowing. "He said if I took your things, he would call the police and report it as theft. So, I pulled out my phone, hit record, and told him to go ahead. I told him I would love to show the police the state of the apartment and explain exactly why my brother ended up in the ICU. He backed down immediately, but Noah, the look in his eyes. It was pure poison." "He threatened you?" Liam asked, his voice dropping an octave, a dangerous, lethal edge creeping into his tone. His grip on my waist tightened slightly. "Did he touch you, Emma?" "No. I think he knew if he laid a finger on me, you would actually kill him," Emma said bluntly. She looked at Liam, her expression softening. "But he had a message for you. He said to tell you that he's freezing the company assets first thing tomorrow morning, and that he's going to sue you for breach of contract and completely destroy you in the industry." I looked up at Liam, panic seizing my chest. "Liam, he can do it. His family has money, they have lawyers. You can't let him destroy everything you've worked for because of me." Liam looked down at me, and to my absolute shock, he smiled. It wasn't a kind, gentle smile. It was a sharp, predatory grin. The smile of a man who was holding all the winning cards in a high-stakes game. "Let him try," Liam said, his voice brimming with dark confidence. "Ethan has always been the face of the firm, the smooth talker at the dinner parties. But I built the infrastructure. I wrote the code for our financial algorithms. I hold the patents, and I own 51% of the voting shares. If he wants a war, I will bury him so deep in litigation he won't be able to afford a studio apartment, let alone a penthouse." He reached out, his thumb gently caressing my cheek, his expression instantly melting from ruthless businessman to utter devotion. "He thought he could use his power to control you, Noah. Now I'm going to use my power to make sure he never touches you again." The raw, unfiltered protectiveness in Liam's words left me breathless. I had spent so long defending myself, fighting for basic respect in my own home, that having someone stand in front of me, ready to burn the world down on my behalf, felt completely intoxicating. After we managed to eat a quiet dinner, Liam watching me like a hawk to ensure I finished every drop of the nutrient-rich soup Emma had made, the fatigue began to pull at me again. The doctor had warned that recovery from the severe infection would take weeks of rest. Emma kissed my cheek and retreated to her own room, exhausted from her confrontation with Ethan. Liam walked me back to the guest room, pulling back the covers and waiting until I was settled against the pillows. He turned off the harsh overhead light, leaving only the soft, warm glow of a small bedside lamp, and sat in the chair next to the bed. "Liam," I whispered, the silence of the room making me bold. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," he replied softly, leaning forward, resting his elbows on his knees, so he was closer to me. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked, my eyes searching his striking features. "Before this week, when you saw how he was treating me, why did you stay quiet?" A shadow of deep, profound guilt crossed Liam's face. He looked down at his hands for a long moment before meeting my gaze again. "It's the biggest regret of my life," Liam confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "When you two first started dating, Ethan was a different person. He worshipped you. And honestly, I was jealous. But I told myself you were happy, and it wasn't my place." He reached out, his warm fingers lightly tracing the knuckles of my hand where it rested on the blanket. "But as the years went on, and he started changing, I saw the light fading from your eyes," Liam continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I saw him ignore you. I saw him belittle you in front of me. And every time I opened my mouth to defend you, Ethan would shut me down, reminding me that we were business partners, not marriage counselors. And you always smiled, Noah. You always smoothed it over and said it was fine. I thought if I pushed too hard, I would cause a fight that he would take out on you when I wasn't around." Liam stood up, sitting on the edge of my bed, closing the distance between us. His eyes were wide, pleading with me to understand. I was a coward. I didn't want to overstep because I was terrified that if I did, Ethan would cut me off, and I would never get to see you again, Liam whispered, his face inches from mine. "I've been in love with you for 2 years, Noah. I watched you make coffee in my office. I watched you support a man who didn't deserve you, and it tore me apart. When I saw you on that floor, when I realized I almost lost you because I was trying to be polite, I swore I would never, ever stay silent again." My breath hitched. The words hit the air with the force of a physical blow, heavy, undeniable, and beautiful. 2 years. He had loved me in secret while I felt entirely unlovable. I slowly reached my hand out, ignoring the dull ache in my arm, and pressed my palm against Liam's cheek. The slight stubble on his jaw was rough against my skin. He leaned into my touch instantly, his eyes closing, a shuddering breath escaping his lips. "You're not a coward, Liam," I whispered, my thumb brushing just below his eye. "You saved my life." Liam opened his eyes, the intense, burning heat in his gaze making my heart race violently. He leaned in, his forehead coming to rest against mine, our breaths mingling in the quiet room. He didn't kiss me. We both knew I was still too fragile, and the wounds from Ethan were too fresh to rush. But the intimacy of the moment was more profound than any physical act. "I'm going to take care of you, Noah," Liam murmured against my skin, his arms wrapping around me, pulling me securely against his chest. "I'm going to show you what you actually deserve." As I closed my eyes and let the warmth of his embrace pull me towards sleep, I knew that the storm with Ethan was far from over. There would be lawsuits, screaming matches, and ugly fallout. But lying in the arms of the man who had been quietly loving me in the shadows, I finally knew I was strong enough to face it. End of Part 5. Part 6. The Calm and the Storm. The first week of my recovery at Emma's apartment felt like waking up in an alternate universe. For 3 years, my life had been dictated by the rigid, ticking clock of Ethan's schedule. My mornings used to begin with the sharp panic of brewing the perfect espresso and ensuring the apartment was spotless before he emerged from the bedroom. Now, I woke up to the soft, muffled sounds of the city outside and the comforting aroma of bacon and caramelized onions drifting down the hallway. My physical strength was returning, piece by piece. The lingering cough was fading, and the ghostly pallor of my skin was finally giving way to a healthy flush. But the most profound change wasn't physical. It was the quiet, steady healing of my mind. The constant low-level hum of anxiety that had lived in my chest for months was gone, replaced by a warm, grounding sense of safety. That safety had a name, and his name was Liam. True to his promise, Liam had essentially moved into Emma's guest room with me. He slept on the small, velvet sofa near the window, refusing to leave my side despite my protests that he would ruin his back. During the day, he transformed Emma's modest kitchen island into his new corporate headquarters. I walked out of the bedroom on a Tuesday morning, wrapped in the oversized navy sweater Liam had bought me, pulling the sleeves over my knuckles. The winter sun was streaming through the large living room windows, casting a golden glow over the space. Liam was sitting at the island, wearing a pair of dark-rimmed glasses that made him look devastatingly handsome. His laptop was open, displaying complex graphs, and a Bluetooth earpiece was tucked into his ear. He was in the middle of what sounded like a tense negotiation. "I don't care what his legal team claims, Marcus," Liam said, his voice laced with that cold, ruthless authority he reserved strictly for business. The intellectual property clauses were drawn up by my attorneys before Ethan was even brought on as a partner. If he attempts to access the offshore accounts, trigger the lockdown protocol. Lock him out completely. Let him try to explain to the board why he can't access the client funds. I stood frozen in the hallway, suddenly overwhelmed by a fresh wave of guilt. Liam was tearing his own company apart, battling his former best friend, all because he had chosen to protect me. As if sensing my presence, Liam's eyes darted up from his screen. The icy, ruthless businessman vanished in a fraction of a second. His entire posture softened, the hard lines of his jaw relaxing as a warm, devastatingly gentle smile spread across his face. "Hold on, Marcus. I need to call you back," Liam said, not taking his eyes off me. He pulled the earpiece out and tossed it onto the counter, immediately standing up and crossing the room. "You shouldn't be dealing with all this," I murmured, wrapping my arms around my torso as he approached. "Liam, he's going to destroy everything you built. I'm causing a war." Liam didn't answer with words. He stepped into my space, his large hands coming up to gently cup my face. His thumbs brushed softly over my cheekbones, tilting my head up so I was forced to look directly into his striking blue eyes. "Noah," Liam said softly, his voice a deep, resonant rumble that sent a shiver straight down my spine. "Do I look like a man who is losing a war?" I blinked, momentarily paralyzed by the sheer confidence radiating from him. "Ethan is a shark," Liam continued, his thumbs continuing their soothing rhythm against my skin. "But I'm the ocean he swims in. He only has power because I designed the system that allows him to have it. I am dismantling him, piece by piece, and I am enjoying every single second of it. Do you understand? You are not a burden. You are my reason." My breath hitched. The way he looked at me, like I was the most precious, vital thing in his world, was completely intoxicating. I leaned into his touch, my hands coming up to grip his wrists. The contrast between Ethan's transactional affection and Liam's fierce, unconditional devotion was blinding. "Thank you," I whispered, the words feeling inadequate for the mountain of gratitude I owed him. Liam smiled, his gaze dropping to my lips for a fleeting, agonizing second before he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Come on. Emma made us promise you'd eat protein this morning. I'm making scrambled eggs." We settled into a domestic rhythm that felt so natural it almost frightened me. I sat on a bar stool, watching him move around the kitchen with easy, confident grace. We talked about everything and nothing, his childhood in Seattle, my love for painting which I had abandoned because Ethan thought it was a messy hobby, the books lining Emma's shelves. Every time I spoke, Liam gave me his undivided attention. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look at his watch. He just listened, as if my words were the most fascinating things he had ever heard. By Thursday, the cabin fever finally set in. I had been confined to the apartment for nearly 10 days, and my legs were practically vibrating with the need to move. "Just to the coffee shop down the street," I pleaded, leaning against the kitchen counter while Liam reviewed a stack of legal briefs. "Emma's place is starting to feel like a very comfortable prison. I just need fresh air, Liam. Please." Liam looked up, his brow furrowing in protective hesitation. "It's freezing outside, Noah. Your immune system is still recovering. I'll wear 3 layers. I'll wear a scarf over my face. I just need to see the sky," I begged, offering a small, hopeful smile. Liam stared at me for a long moment before letting out a defeated sigh, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're lucky I have zero ability to say no to you. Go put your coat on. But if you even shiver once, I'm carrying you back up those stairs." 15 minutes later, we were stepping out of the brownstone and into the crisp, biting wind of the Chicago winter. I was buried under a thick wool coat, a scarf, and a beanie, but the cold air hitting my lungs felt like an absolute revelation. It felt like freedom. Liam walked practically glued to my side, his hand resting firmly on the small of my back, guiding me over the icy pavement. The physical contact sent a continuous, comforting warmth radiating through my heavy layers. The local coffee shop was a small, independent place on the corner, smelling heavily of roasted espresso beans and cinnamon pastries. It was relatively quiet, with only a few patrons huddled over laptops at the small wooden tables. "Go grab that booth in the back," Liam instructed, gently steering me toward a cozy corner away from the drafty door. "What do you want?" "The usual. A caramel latte, please," I smiled, sliding into the leather booth. Liam nodded, his eyes lingering on my face for a second before he turned and walked toward the counter. I watched him go, admiring the broad span of his shoulders under his tailored winter coat. My heart did a strange, fluttering acrobatics routine in my chest. I am falling completely in love with this man, I realized, the thought washing over me not with panic, but with profound peace. I pulled off my gloves and rested my hands on the wooden table, looking out the frosted window at the passing cars. "Hello, Noah." The voice hit my ears like a bucket of ice water. My blood froze instantly in my veins. The peaceful sanctuary of the coffee shop shattered. I snapped my head around. Sliding into the booth directly across from me, blocking my exit, was Ethan. I almost didn't recognize him. The immaculately groomed, arrogant executive was gone. His hair was messy, hanging over his forehead. His eyes were bloodshot, ringed with dark, heavy bags. His jaw was covered in a rough, uneven shadow of a beard, and his expensive designer coat looked rumpled, as if he had slept in it. He looked desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. "Ethan," I breathed, my heart immediately kicking into a panicked, frantic rhythm. My eyes darted toward the counter. Liam was trapped behind a line of 3 people, his back to me, completely unaware. "Don't call him," Ethan snapped, his voice a low, frantic hiss. He reached across the table, his hand shooting out to grab my wrist. His grip was entirely too tight, his fingers digging into my skin. I tried to pull back, but he held on. "Let go of me," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "You have to stop this, Noah," Ethan pleaded, his eyes wide and manic. "You have to tell Liam to back off. Do you have any idea what he's doing?" He froze the accounts. "The board is threatening to oust me. My reputation is completely ruined. He's destroying my life." "You destroyed your own life," I shot back, a sudden surge of anger cutting through my fear. "You did this, Ethan. Now let go of my wrist before I scream." "No." Ethan's voice rose slightly, drawing a curious glance from a woman at the next table. He leaned in closer, his breath smelling of stale coffee and something sour. "You belong to me, Noah. We're getting married. You're just throwing a tantrum because you felt neglected for a few days. I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. I'll take you on a vacation. I'll buy you that studio space you wanted for your stupid paintings. Just come home and tell Liam to call off his lawyers." It was the most pathetic, transactional apology I had ever heard. He wasn't sorry for almost letting me die. He was sorry that his bank accounts were frozen. He was trying to buy me back to save his company. I looked at the man who had controlled my every waking thought for 3 years, and suddenly, the fear evaporated, leaving behind nothing but cold, absolute disgust. "You still don't get it," I said, my voice dropping to a quiet, icy register. I stopped pulling away and leaned forward, looking him dead in the eye. I didn't leave because I wanted an apology. I left because I finally realized I am worth more than whatever scraps of attention you decide to throw at me when it's convenient for your schedule. I don't love you anymore, Ethan. In fact, looking at you right now, I don't think I feel anything at all. Ethan's face went completely pale. The desperate pleading in his eyes hardened into something toxic and furious. "You little," Ethan snarled, his grip on my wrist tightening painfully as he started to pull himself up from the booth, his other hand raising as if to grab my coat. A shadow suddenly fell over the table. Before Ethan could even blink, a large hand clamped down onto the back of his neck with bone-crushing force. "Take your hands off him." Liam's voice echoed through the coffee shop, a low, deadly growl that sounded like a predator cornering its prey. "Right. Now." Liam's grip on Ethan's neck tightened visibly. Ethan gasped, his eyes wide with sudden terror, and his fingers immediately released my wrist. I pulled my arm back, cradling it against my chest, my heart pounding in my throat. Liam didn't let go of Ethan. He leaned down, his face mere inches from Ethan's ear, completely ignoring the shocked stares of the baristas and patrons. "I told you," Liam said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "that if you ever came near him again, I would ruin you. You have exactly 10 seconds to walk out that door before I call the police and have you arrested for assault. And then I am going to call Marcus, and I am going to instruct him to liquidate every single asset your name is attached to." Ethan was shaking. He looked between Liam's murderous expression and my cold, unyielding stare. He finally realized that his money, his manipulation, and his anger meant absolutely nothing here. He had lost, completely and utterly. Liam shoved Ethan forward, releasing him. Ethan stumbled out of the booth, nearly tripping over his own expensive shoes. He didn't say another word. He turned and practically ran out the front door, disappearing into the crowded Winter Street. Liam immediately slid into the booth beside me, crowding into my space. His large hands gently took my wrist, examining the angry red marks Ethan's fingers had left on my pale skin. His jaw was clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might shatter. "I'm sorry," Liam breathed, his voice thick with rage and regret. "I shouldn't have turned my back. I'm so sorry, Noah." "Don't apologize," I whispered, reaching my free hand up to touch his cheek, forcing him to look at me. "I'm not bleeding. I'm fine." "He put his hands on you," Liam choked out, his striking blue eyes swirling with a protective fury that took my breath away. "I swear to God, Noah, I am going to destroy him." "I know you will," I said softly, the truth ringing with absolute certainty in my chest. And right there, in the middle of the quiet coffee shop, I closed the distance between us and pressed my lips to his. End of Part 6. Part 7. The Architect of Ruin. The kiss was a sudden, electric collision of pure adrenaline, lingering fear, and profound, overwhelming relief. For a fraction of a second, Liam froze, completely caught off guard by my boldness. But the hesitation vanished instantly. With a low, desperate groan that vibrated in the back of his throat, Liam's large hands slid from my wrists to frame my face, his long fingers tangling in the hair at the nape of my neck. He kissed me back with a fierce, consuming hunger, pouring 2 years of silent longing, unbearable patience, and desperate devotion into a single, breathtaking moment. The coffee shop, the staring patrons, the lingering phantom chill of Ethan's presence, it all melted away, reduced to white noise. There was only the heat of Liam's mouth against mine, the grounding strength of his hands, and the terrifying, beautiful realization that I was finally exactly where I was meant to be. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. Liam kept his forehead pressed against mine, his eyes closed as he let out a shuddering breath. His thumbs stroked my cheekbones in a slow, rhythmic motion, as if he was trying to convince himself that I was real, that this was actually happening. "I have wanted to do that," Liam whispered, his voice incredibly rough and raw. "Every single day since the moment I met you." A small, genuine laugh escaped my lips, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in over a year. "Then what took you so long?" Liam opened his eyes. The striking, vivid blue of his irises was burning with an intensity that made my pulse race. "I was waiting for you to realize that you owned me," he murmured, pressing one last, tender kiss to the corner of my mouth. "Come on, we're getting out of here." He didn't bother collecting our untouched coffees. He simply wrapped his arm tightly around my waist, pulling me flush against his side, and guided me out of the shop. The bitter Chicago wind hit us the moment the door opened, but I didn't feel the cold. I was entirely insulated by the heat radiating from the man beside me. The walk back to Emma's brownstone was swift. Liam's jaw was set in a rigid line, his protective instincts on terrifyingly high alert. His eyes scanned the street, the parked cars, the shadows between the buildings, ensuring Ethan hadn't lingered. But the coward was gone. The moment we walked through the door of Emma's apartment, the heavy, deadbolt lock clicking into place behind us, the transition in Liam was instantaneous. The gentle, reverent man who had just kissed me in a coffee shop vanished, replaced by the ruthless, calculating corporate architect who was about to bring an empire to its knees. Emma walked out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She took one look at my flushed face and the dark, lethal expression on Liam's face. "What happened? You two were gone for 20 minutes. "Ethan ambushed him at the cafe," Liam said, his voice terrifyingly calm. It wasn't the loud, explosive anger Ethan used to wield. It was a quiet, absolute zero wrath that froze the air in the room. Emma dropped the dish towel, her eyes flashing with instant fury. "Are you kidding me? Is Noah okay? Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine, Em, really," I said quickly, stepping forward to reassure her. "Liam handled it." Ethan ran off. "He grabbed his wrist," Liam corrected, his eyes dropping to the faint red marks on my skin that were already beginning to fade. "And for that, he is going to lose everything." Liam walked past us, heading straight for the kitchen island. He picked up his phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker and tossing it onto the marble counter. He braced his hands on the edge of the island, his broad shoulders tense beneath his coat. "Marcus," Liam said the moment the call connected. "Liam, I've been waiting for your call." The smooth, professional voice of his lead attorney echoed through the kitchen. "The board is in a panic. Ethan has been calling emergency meetings trying to spin your absence as a breach of contract." "Let him spin," Liam ordered, his tone laced with ice. "I want you to execute the liquidation protocol. Right now." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Liam, are you sure?" "That protocol is the nuclear option. It will instantly freeze all operational capital, lock Ethan out of the main servers, and trigger a complete audit of his personal expense accounts linked to the firm. He won't be able to buy a cup of coffee by tomorrow morning. I am completely aware of what it does, Marcus, because I wrote the damn protocol, Liam snarled softly. Trigger it. And when the audit inevitably uncovers the funds he's been quietly siphoning to pay for that ridiculous penthouse and his custom suits, I want you to hand the file directly to the federal prosecutors. Charge him with embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, and corporate fraud. I stood next to Emma, my breath catching in my throat. I had known Ethan was obsessed with maintaining an image of immense wealth, but I had no idea he was stealing from his own company to fund it. Liam knew. Liam had known, and he had kept the evidence locked away as a failsafe. Consider it done, Marcus said, the hesitation gone, replaced by predatory efficiency. Ethan's access codes will be revoked in exactly 60 seconds. I'll have the SEC filings drafted by midnight. Thank you, Marcus. Keep me updated, Liam said, reaching out to end the call. He stood there for a moment, his head bowed, his hands gripping the edge of the marble so tightly his knuckles were white. The silence in the apartment was heavy, thick with the magnitude of what had just occurred. With a single phone call, Liam had obliterated Ethan's entire existence. I walked slowly across the kitchen, stopping right beside Liam. I reached out, gently prying his right hand away from the counter, lacing my fingers through his. The tension slowly drained out of his massive frame. He turned his head, looking down at me, the coldness in his eyes melting away into that familiar, devastating warmth. It's done, Liam whispered, raising our joined hands to press his lips against my knuckles. He can never hurt you again, Noah. He won't have the resources, the power, or the reputation to ever cast a shadow on your life again. Over the next 4 days, the fallout was biblical. Emma and I watched the financial news networks from the safety of the plush velvet sofa. The collapse of Ethan's career played out like a public execution. The emergency audit Liam had triggered revealed massive discrepancies in Ethan's accounts. The board of directors, terrified of federal implication, voted unanimously to terminate Ethan's partnership without severance. Photos of Ethan being escorted out of his pristine glass office building by security, his face pale and contorted in shock, flooded the local business columns. His assets were frozen. The downtown apartment we had shared, the museum where I had slowly suffocated for 3 years, was seized by the bank pending the federal investigation. I thought I would feel pity. I thought I might feel a twinge of guilt for the man I had once planned to marry. But sitting there, wrapped in a blanket, with the scent of Liam's cologne lingering on the fabric, I felt nothing but a profound, liberating emptiness. Ethan was a ghost, exorcised completely from my reality. Instead of dwelling on the destruction, Liam focused entirely on creation, specifically my creation. On the 5th day, Liam returned to the apartment carrying 2 massive shopping bags from a high-end art supply store. He set them down in the middle of the living room with a heavy thud. "What is all this?" I asked, looking up from the book I was reading. Liam smiled, taking off his coat. "Emma mentioned that you used to be a brilliant painter in college. She also mentioned that you threw out all your supplies when you moved in with Ethan because he said the smell of turpentine gave him a headache and the canvases ruined his aesthetic." My heart squeezed. I had pushed that memory so far down it felt like it belonged to another person. "So," Liam continued, pulling out expensive sable brushes, tubes of high-grade oil paints, and a large, pristine blank canvas. "I bought you new ones. The spare room down the hall has great natural light. I talked to Emma, and we're converting it into your studio." Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. He wasn't just giving me a safe place to sleep. He was actively handing me back the pieces of my soul that Ethan had forced me to abandon. "Liam," I choked out, overwhelmed. "Don't cry," Liam murmured, crossing the room to pull me up from the sofa and into his arms. "You're going to paint again, Noah. You're going to make a mess. You're going to fill this place with color, and I am going to buy every single piece you make." That evening, I stood in the spare room, wearing an old t-shirt, staring at the blank canvas. The smell of oil paint and linseed oil filled the air, a scent I hadn't realized I missed so desperately. I picked up a brush, the familiar weight of the wood feeling like an extension of my own arm. I didn't think about Ethan. I didn't think about the pain, the fever, or the cold kitchen floor. I thought about the ocean. I thought about piercing blue eyes, the feeling of strong hands wrapping around my waist, and the absolute safety of being chosen, fiercely and without hesitation. I mixed deep blues, stormy grays, and brilliant flashes of gold. I was lost in the rhythm of the brushstrokes, the world outside completely fading away, when I felt a warm, broad chest press against my back. Strong arms wrapped securely around my waist, pulling me back against a solid frame. Liam buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. "It's beautiful," Liam murmured, his voice rumbling against my spine. "It's not done yet," I whispered, leaning back into his embrace, letting my head rest against his shoulder. "We have all the time in the world for you to finish it," Liam replied softly, turning his head to press a slow, lingering kiss against the sensitive skin just below my ear, sending a jolt of electricity straight to my core. "The dust has settled, Noah. The lawyers are handling the rest. We're free." I turned around in his arms, careful not to get paint on his expensive shirt. I looked up into the face of the man who had burned an empire down just to keep me warm. I reached up, my paint-stained fingers hovering just above the collar of his shirt. "Where do we go from here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper in the quiet room. Liam smiled, a genuine, breathtaking expression that reached all the way to his eyes. He leaned down, capturing my lips in a deep, slow, intoxicating kiss that promised everything Ethan had ever denied me. "Anywhere you want," Liam whispered against my mouth. "As long as you're with me." End of Part 7. Part 8, The Ashes and the Crown. 2 months. That was how long it took for the ghosts of my past to finally stop haunting the corners of my mind. 2 months of waking up not to the harsh, demanding blare of an alarm or the sharp criticisms of a man who never truly saw me, but to the soft, golden light filtering through the linen curtains and the steady, grounding rhythm of Liam's breathing beside me. I stood in the center of my makeshift studio in Emma's apartment, a smear of cerulean blue paint across my cheek, wiping my hands on a heavily stained rag. The room was chaotic in the most beautiful, liberating way. Canvases leaned against every available wall, exploding with color and life. After years of being confined to the muted, sterile grays and whites of Ethan's pristine aesthetic, my soul was pouring itself out in violent, passionate hues. Liam had been a man of his absolute word. He hadn't just rebuilt his company from the ashes of Ethan's embezzlement scandal. He had restructured it entirely, taking full, unyielding control as the sole CEO. The federal investigations into Ethan's finances had been swift and brutal. But no matter how demanding the corporate transition was, Liam never brought the stress home. When he walked through the front door of our apartment, the ruthless, untouchable corporate titan was left in the hallway. The man who entered the kitchen was just mine. "You're staring at that canvas like it owes you an apology." I turned, a genuine smile automatically curving my lips. Liam was leaning against the doorframe, his dark suit jacket discarded somewhere in the living room, the top 2 buttons of his crisp white shirt undone, his tie hanging loosely around his neck. The sheer, magnetic pull I felt toward him hadn't dulled over the last 8 weeks. If anything, the quiet, safe domesticity had only fanned the flames into a consuming, beautiful ache. "I think it needs more yellow," I mused, stepping back to analyze the stormy seascape I had been working on for 3 days. Liam walked into the room, entirely unbothered by the wet paint and turpentine, and wrapped his strong arms around my waist from behind. He pulled me flush against his chest, pressing a warm, lingering kiss to the side of my neck, right over my pulse point. "I think it's a masterpiece, just like the artist." I leaned back into his solid warmth, closing my eyes and letting out a contented sigh. "Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. CEO." Liam chuckled, a deep, resonant vibration that sent shivers straight down my spine. But when he pulled back slightly, turning me around in his arms, his expression shifted into something uncharacteristically hesitant. He reached into the inner pocket of his slacks and pulled out a heavy, cream-colored envelope adorned with gold foil lettering. "What's this?" I asked, taking the heavy cardstock from his hand. "The board of directors is hosting a restructuring gala this Saturday at the Drake Hotel," Liam explained quietly, his vivid blue eyes searching my face for any sign of distress. "It's the official public announcement of the new firm. The press will be there. The major investors, the socialites, the whole circus." My stomach gave a tiny, involuntary lurch. High society corporate galas. For 3 years, those events had been my personal purgatory. Ethan used to spend hours criticizing my appearance before we left the apartment. "Don't speak unless spoken to, Noah. Don't embarrass me in front of the board. Stop fidgeting." I had been conditioned to stand quietly in the background, holding his coat, practically invisible, while he charmed the room and pretended I was nothing more than an accessory. Liam saw the shadow cross my face. His hands immediately came up to cup my cheeks, his thumbs gently wiping away the smudge of blue paint near my jaw. "You don't have to go," Liam said firmly, his tone leaving absolutely no room for debate. "I can make an appearance, give my speech, and be home in an hour. Or I can skip it entirely and send Marcus to read a statement. I do not care about the optics, Noah. I care about you. If stepping into that world again brings you an ounce of pain, I will burn the invitation right now." I looked down at the beautiful, heavy invitation. Then I looked up at the man standing in front of me. The man who had burned an empire to the ground to keep me safe. The man who looked at me like I hung the moon and the stars. He was about to be crowned the undisputed king of his industry, and he was willing to skip his own coronation if it caused me even a fraction of discomfort. The timid, terrified boy who had collapsed on Ethan's kitchen floor with a deadly fever was gone. He had burned away, leaving behind someone much stronger. "I want to go," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. Liam raised a dark eyebrow, his hands still framing my face. "Are you sure?" "Noah, some of Ethan's old social circle will definitely be there. People talk. The press knows what happened." "Let them talk," I said, reaching up to cover his large hands with my own. "I spent 3 years hiding in the shadows of those ballrooms, Liam. I'm not hiding anymore. And I am absolutely not letting you celebrate the biggest night of your career alone." The look of pure, unadulterated awe that crossed Liam's face made my heart physically ache. He leaned down, capturing my lips in a slow, devastatingly tender kiss that stole the breath right out of my lungs. "You," he murmured against my mouth, "are the bravest person I have ever met." Saturday evening arrived with a flurry of nervous, electric energy. Liam had completely refused to let me wear any of the old, stifling suits I had salvaged from my past life. Instead, he had sent a master tailor to the apartment 3 days prior. When I finally stepped out of the bedroom, Emma was waiting in the living room, a celebratory glass of champagne in her hand. She took one look at me and let out a low, impressed whistle. "Oh, honey," Emma breathed, her eyes shining with unshed tears of pride. "You look like $1,000,000. No, scratch that. You look priceless." I looked down at the midnight blue velvet tuxedo jacket, perfectly tailored to hug my waist and accentuate my shoulders. It wasn't the stiff, suffocating armor Ethan used to force me into. It felt luxurious, powerful, and undeniably me. The sound of the front door unlocking echoed through the apartment, and Liam walked in. He stopped dead in his tracks. He was wearing a classic, razor-sharp black tuxedo that made him look dangerously handsome, radiating pure authority. But all the power he commanded seemed to completely evaporate the second his eyes landed on me. He stood frozen, his breath hitching visibly in his chest. "Liam," I asked, suddenly feeling a flush of heat rise to my cheeks under his intense, burning stare. "Is it too much?" "It's not enough," Liam breathed, walking toward me as if pulled by an invisible magnetic force. He stopped mere inches away, his eyes raking over my frame with a dark, possessive heat that made my pulse hammer in my throat. "You are going to bring the entire city of Chicago to its knees tonight. I am going to have to fight off every single man in that ballroom." "They can try," I whispered, reaching out to softly adjust his silk bow tie. "But I'm only going home with the CEO." Liam's eyes darkened ominously. He grabbed my waist, pulling me flush against his solid chest, and pressed a hot, bruising kiss to my lips that left my head spinning. "Keep looking at me like that, Noah, and we aren't making it to the gala at all." The Drake Hotel was a beacon of old-world opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast a dazzling, fractured light over the sea of silk gowns and tailored tuxedos in the grand lobby. As Liam and I stepped out of the black town car, the blinding flash of paparazzi cameras instantly assaulted us. Old instincts flared in the back of my mind. My shoulders tensed, and I instinctively started to step back, preparing to fall a few paces behind Liam and make myself invisible for the cameras. But Liam didn't let me. His hand slid down my arm, his long fingers intertwining firmly with mine. He didn't just hold my hand, he anchored me to his side, pulling me into the spotlight with him. "You're not walking behind me, Noah," Liam murmured, his voice a low, steady rumble near my ear, completely drowning out the shouting photographers. "You walk beside me. Always." I took a deep breath, squeezed his hand, and lifted my chin. The moment we walked through the gilded double doors into the grand ballroom, the ambient chatter dropped noticeably. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the elite crowd like a physical wave. Everyone in that room knew the scandal. They knew Ethan Sterling had been ousted and faced federal prison, and they knew the man he had neglected and abused was now walking hand in hand with the architect of his ruin. But as I walked through the crowd with Liam, I didn't feel the suffocating shame I had anticipated. I felt utterly untouchable. Liam's presence was a shield of pure authority. Board members, politicians, and investors rushed forward to shake his hand, and every single time, Liam introduced me not just as a guest, but as his partner, with a fierce, unwavering pride that made my chest swell. An hour into the event, Liam was pulled aside by the chief financial officer to sign a ceremonial document for the press photographers. "I'll be exactly 2 minutes," he promised, kissing my temple before reluctantly stepping away. I stood near a towering, intricate ice sculpture, sipping a glass of expensive champagne, feeling genuinely at peace as I watched Liam command the room from afar. "I always knew you were a social climber, Noah, but I didn't think you'd sink this low." The voice was sharp, dripping with venom and aristocratic disdain. The sound of it sent a cold spike of adrenaline straight into my veins. I turned slowly. Standing there, dripping in diamonds and wearing a harsh, emerald-green gown, was Eleanor Sterling, Ethan's mother. She looked older, her face pinched with a bitter fury that completely ruined her expensive, carefully maintained elegance. For years, this woman had made it her mission to privately remind me that I was new money, a struggling artist with no pedigree, utterly unworthy of her golden son. I used to physically shake when she entered a room. Now, looking at her, all I saw was a desperate, angry woman clinging to the ruins of a broken, fraudulent legacy. "Good evening, Eleanor," I said, my voice smooth and perfectly level. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. Her eyes narrowed into furious slits. "Do not speak to me with that condescending tone. You ruined my son. He is facing federal charges, his accounts are frozen, and our family name is a laughingstock. And you just hopped right into the bed of the man who stole his company. You are a parasite." The surrounding guests had fallen completely silent, awkwardly pretending to examine their drinks while hanging onto every single word. In the past, I would have apologized. I would have run to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried until I couldn't breathe. But the fire Liam had ignited in my soul flared brightly, burning away any remaining fear. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my champagne, lowered the crystal glass, and looked Eleanor dead in the eye. "I didn't ruin your son, Eleanor," I said, my voice carrying clearly and calmly over the soft jazz music playing in the background. "Your son's arrogance and his greed ruined him. He stole from his own company to buy the lifestyle you expected him to maintain. He let me nearly die of a fever because taking me to a doctor was inconvenient to his schedule. As for Liam, he didn't steal the company. He sanitized it. He simply took out the trash." Eleanor gasped loudly, her face turning a violent shade of red. She raised her hand, her eyes wide with rage, as if she were actually going to slap me in the middle of the Drake Hotel ballroom. Before she could even complete the motion, Liam materialized out of the crowd like a phantom. He didn't shout. He didn't cause a physical scene. He simply stepped gracefully between us, his massive frame completely eclipsing Eleanor and shielding me entirely. "Mrs. Sterling," Liam said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly soft, lethal register that made the surrounding guests physically step back. "If you do not remove yourself from this building in the next 10 seconds, I will have my security team physically throw you out onto the pavement. And tomorrow morning, I will personally ensure the press knows exactly why the Sterling matriarch was ejected from my gala." Eleanor trembled violently, her raised hand dropping limply to her side. She looked at Liam's murderous expression, then peered around his shoulder to see my calm, unbothered face. Realizing she had absolutely no power here, and that the crowd was watching her humiliation, she turned on her heel and practically fled the ballroom. Liam turned to me instantly, his large hands gripping my shoulders, his eyes frantically scanning my face for any sign of distress or lingering trauma. "Did she hurt you?" "Noah, I'm so sorry. I never should have walked away." "Liam," I interrupted softly, placing my hand flat over his chest. I could feel his heart hammering wildly against his ribs. "I'm fine. I really am." He stared at me, the panic in his eyes slowly fading as he saw the absolute truth in my expression. The realization hit him. I hadn't needed rescuing. I hadn't shattered. I had stood my ground and defended myself. The pride and raw devotion that washed over his features was so intense it was almost blinding. Right there, in front of the board of directors, the flashing cameras, and the remnants of Ethan's high society world, Liam wrapped his arms around my waist and pulled me flush against him. He didn't care who was watching. He didn't care about the optics. He kissed me with a desperate, consuming passion that claimed me completely, a public declaration that I belonged to him, and he belonged to me. When he finally pulled away, leaving me breathless and dizzy, he rested his forehead against mine, a wicked, beautiful smile playing on his lips. "You are magnificent," Liam whispered, his voice rough. "And I suddenly have zero interest in the rest of this gala." "Then take me home, Liam," I breathed. He didn't need to be told twice. He took my hand, intertwining our fingers, and together we walked out of the ballroom, leaving the ashes of my past far behind us. End of Part 8. Part 9, The Canvas of Us. The partition in the sleek black town car was rolled up, sealing us in a private, luxurious cocoon as we sped away from the Drake Hotel. The blinding flashes of the paparazzi and the stifling whispers of the elite society faded into the quiet hum of the engine and the soft rhythm of the rain tapping against the tinted windows. The Chicago skyline blurred into streaks of gold and silver, but I wasn't looking at the city. My eyes were entirely fixed on the man sitting beside me. Liam had discarded his silk bow tie, the collar of his crisp white shirt unbuttoned, exposing the strong, elegant line of his throat. He looked relaxed, powerful, and utterly breathtaking. His arm was draped securely around my shoulders, my side pressed flush against his chest, our fingers still tightly intertwined, as if letting go was physically impossible. "You're staring," Liam murmured, his voice a deep, resonant vibration that sent a familiar, thrilling shiver straight down my spine. He turned his head, his striking blue eyes catching the passing streetlights, burning with an affection so profound it made my breath hitch. "I'm just trying to process everything," I admitted softly, resting my head against his solid shoulder. I stood up to her, Liam. I looked Eleanor Sterling in the eye, and I didn't shake. I didn't apologize for existing. Liam shifted, turning his body toward me so he could cup my face with his free hand. His thumb gently stroked my cheekbone. "You did more than stand up to her, Noah. You banished her. You banished all of them. I watched you tonight, and it was like watching a completely different person from the boy I found on that kitchen floor. You were magnificent. I had a pretty good reason to be brave," I whispered, leaning into his warm palm. "I had you standing right behind me." Liam leaned in, pressing a slow, desperately tender kiss to my lips. It wasn't the fiery, claiming kiss from the coffee shop or the ballroom. It was a slow, deliberate worship, a silent promise of eternal safety. "Always," he breathed against my mouth. "I will always stand between you and the rest of the world." The car glided to a smooth halt, but instead of pulling up to Emma's familiar brownstone, we were parked in front of a towering, ultramodern glass skyscraper in the heart of the Gold Coast. I pulled back slightly, my brow furrowing in confusion. "Where are we?" I asked, looking up at the imposing, illuminated canopy. Liam smiled, a secretive, brilliant expression that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He didn't answer immediately. He simply climbed out, opened my door, and offered me his hand. I took it without hesitation, letting him lead me past the bowing concierge and into a private, wood-paneled elevator. He swiped a sleek black keycard, and the elevator shot upwards, bypassing dozens of floors until it reached the very top. With a soft chime, the doors parted, opening directly into a sprawling, breathtaking penthouse. The space was a masterpiece of architecture. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic, unobstructed view of the glittering Chicago skyline and the dark, endless expanse of Lake Michigan. The floors were a rich, dark walnut, and the furniture was a perfect blend of modern luxury and deep, inviting comfort. It was immaculate, yet it didn't feel cold or sterile like Ethan's apartment. It felt alive. "Welcome home, Noah," Liam said softly, stepping up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder as we looked out over the city. My heart skipped a beat. "Home. Liam, this is your penthouse. I thought we were staying at Emma's until we found a place together." "This is our place," Liam corrected gently, pressing a kiss to my temple. "I bought it 3 weeks ago. I've been having it secretly renovated. But the living room isn't the best part." He took my hand again and led me down a wide, warmly lit hallway, stopping in front of a pair of heavy double doors. He pushed them open, and I completely lost my breath. It was the largest room in the penthouse, bathed in the soft glow of the city lights pouring through the glass walls. But it wasn't a master bedroom or a corporate home office. It was a fully equipped, professional art studio. Heavy wooden easels stood ready, surrounded by custom-built shelving stocked with hundreds of tubes of the finest oil paints, premium brushes, turpentine, and massive blank canvases. In the corner sat a plush velvet armchair and a small record player. Liam. I choked out, my hands flying to cover my mouth as tears of pure, overwhelming shock and gratitude prickled my eyes. Emma's spare room was fine for a start, Liam whispered, stepping into the room and pulling me against his chest. But you need space to breathe, Noah. You need space to create without boundaries. I want you to fill this room with color. I want you to make a mess. I want this penthouse to smell like oil paint and linseed oil, because that means you are finally doing what you were born to do. I turned in his arms, wrapping my hands around his neck, pulling him down into a fierce, tear-stained kiss. All the trauma, all the lingering shadows of the past 3 years evaporated completely in the warmth of that room. I was loved. I was truly, unconditionally loved. The transition into our new life was seamless. As the bitter winter melted into a bright, blooming spring, the penthouse transformed from a quiet sanctuary into a vibrant, living home. While Liam commanded his corporate empire from the sleek office down the hall, I spent my days in the studio, losing myself in the rhythm of the brushstrokes. The agonizing pain of the past had transformed into fuel. I painted swirling, violent storms of gray and black that eventually gave way to brilliant, piercing blues, golds, and vibrant greens. Liam was my biggest distraction and my greatest muse. He would often walk into the studio in the middle of the afternoon, discarding his expensive suit jackets, completely unbothered by the fact that I was covered in wet paint. He would wrap me in his arms, burying his face in my neck, inhaling deeply before demanding to see what I had created. He treated every single canvas like it was a priceless artifact. By early June, the studio was full. Dozens of completed paintings leaned against the walls, drying in the warm sunlight. I felt lighter, stronger, and more entirely myself than I had ever been in my entire life. One Friday evening, Liam came home early. I was in the kitchen, wearing one of his oversized t-shirts that hung loosely off my shoulders, humming softly as I chopped vegetables for dinner. He walked up behind me, wrapping his strong arms around my waist, his hands slipping under the hem of the shirt to rest against my bare skin. The sudden, electrifying contact made me gasp, dropping the knife onto the cutting board. "Leave the vegetables," Liam murmured, kissing the shell of my ear, his voice rough and incredibly distracting. "Go put on something nice." The dark blue suit from the gala. I turned my head, raising a suspicious eyebrow. "It's a Friday night. We were supposed to stay in and watch movies. Where are we going?" "It's a surprise," Liam smiled, his blue eyes flashing with a secretive, boyish excitement that was utterly impossible to resist. "Trust me." An hour later, I was sitting in the passenger seat of his car, wearing the velvet suit, completely blind to our destination. Liam drove us into the trendy, artistic heart of the River North Gallery district. The streets were lined with elegant brick buildings, glowing softly with sophisticated lighting. Liam parked the car and guided me down the sidewalk, his hand resting securely on the small of my back. We stopped in front of a sleek, prestigious gallery featuring massive glass windows. There was a small crowd gathered inside, holding champagne flutes, murmuring excitedly. I looked at the elegant gold lettering on the front door, and my heart completely stopped in my chest. Out of the shadows, the debut exhibition of Noah Sterlinghayes. I hadn't legally changed my name, but the implication of hyphenating our names hit me like a beautiful, breathless tidal wave. "Liam," I gasped, stepping back, my eyes wide with shock. What is this?" "I told you I was going to buy every single piece you made," Liam said softly, stepping in front of me and taking both of my hands in his. "But then I realized it would be incredibly selfish to keep your brilliant soul entirely to myself. The world needs to see how beautiful you are, Noah. I rented the gallery. Emma helped me transport the canvases while you were out running errands yesterday." "I can't," I panicked, my chest tightening. Exposing my art meant exposing my deepest vulnerabilities, my pain, and my healing to a room full of strangers. "Liam, they're not ready." "I'm not ready." Liam squeezed my hands, his gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that immediately anchored my spiraling thoughts. "Yes, you are. You survived the darkest, coldest nights, Noah. You took that pain and you turned it into light. You have absolutely nothing to hide anymore. And you are not walking in there alone." He offered me his arm. The absolute, unyielding belief in his eyes gave me the strength I needed. I linked my arm through his, took a deep breath, and we walked through the glass doors. The gallery fell silent for a fraction of a second before breaking into genuine, enthusiastic applause. I looked around the room, completely overwhelmed. Emma was standing near the front, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, beaming with pride. Marcus and several of Liam's trusted board members were there, admiring the art with genuine awe. But the most breathtaking sight was the walls. My paintings, my storms, my oceans, my healing, were beautifully framed and spotlit. They looked powerful. Beside the very first painting I had ever done in Emma's apartment, the stormy seascape with piercing blue, was a small red dot. It was already sold. I bought that one the second we hung it, Liam whispered in my ear, noticing my gaze. It's never leaving our bedroom. The evening was a blur of incredible validation. Critics praised the raw emotion and the stunning use of color. Art collectors handed me their cards, clamoring to commission future pieces. For 3 years, Ethan had convinced me I was a useless burden, an untalented amateur who only existed to serve his needs. Tonight, standing in the center of the gallery, surrounded by people who were moved to tears by my work, that lie was finally permanently shattered. As the night wound down and the last of the guests filed out into the warm summer air, Liam and I were left alone in the quiet gallery. The soft, ambient lighting cast long shadows across the polished wooden floors. I turned to Liam, the sheer magnitude of my love for him swelling in my chest until I thought my ribs might crack. He had given me a home. He had given me back my voice. He had given me back my soul. I walked toward him, the silence stretching beautifully between us. I reached up, my hands framing his incredibly handsome face, my thumbs tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me," I whispered, my voice trembling with raw emotion. Liam's hands settled heavily on my hips, pulling me flush against him. His eyes burned with a devotion so deep and absolute it felt like a physical weight. "I was just waiting for you to catch up, Noah," he murmured. "I am yours. Completely, unconditionally yours." He leaned down, and as his lips met mine in the quiet sanctuary of the gallery, surrounded by the beautiful evidence of my survival, I knew the journey was no longer about escaping the dark. It was about seeing how brightly we could burn together. End of Part 9. Part 10, The Masterpiece of Us. The morning sun filtered through the sheer linen curtains of the penthouse, casting a warm, golden glow across the tangled white sheets. For a long, peaceful moment, I didn't open my eyes. I just lay there, perfectly still, absorbing the profound, quiet miracle of my own life. A year ago, waking up was a battle. It was a frantic, terrifying assessment of how much pain I was in, how much I had to hide, and how quickly I needed to force myself to be small so I wouldn't inconvenience the man I lived with. A year ago, the cold seeped into my bones, and the fever nearly burned me to ash. Now the only warmth I felt was the heavy, solid arm draped securely over my waist, pulling my back flush against a broad, muscular chest. Liam shifted in his sleep, his face burying into the crook of my neck. He let out a low, contented sigh, his breath ghosting over my skin and sending a familiar, electric shiver down my spine. Even in sleep, his grip on me was possessive and fiercely protective, an anchor keeping me safely tethered to this beautiful reality. I turned slowly in his embrace, careful not to wake him. His dark hair was messy, falling over his forehead, and the sharp, ruthless lines of the CEO were completely softened by sleep. I reached up, my fingers gently brushing a stray lock of hair away from his striking face. His striking blue eyes fluttered open slowly. The moment his gaze found mine, the sleepy haze vanished, replaced instantly by that deep, burning devotion that never failed to take my breath away. "Good morning," Liam murmured, his morning voice a rough, incredibly deep rumble. He leaned forward, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to my lips. "Good morning." I smiled against his mouth. "You're supposed to be sleeping in. It's Saturday." "I can sleep when I'm dead," Liam whispered, his hand sliding up my spine to tangle in my hair. "Right now, I have a much better view to look at." I laughed softly, the sound bubbling up from a chest that was completely free of anxiety and fear. It had been exactly 14 months since Liam carried me out of Ethan's toxic apartment, and in that time, my entire universe had been rewritten. The art gallery debut had been just the beginning. My paintings, the turbulent storms and brilliant oceans that I poured my soul into, had taken the Chicago art scene by storm. I was preparing for my third exhibition, and Emma had quit her corporate job to become my full-time manager, negotiating commissions that I couldn't even fathom. As for Ethan, He was a distant, fated nightmare. The federal embezzlement charges had resulted in a lengthy prison sentence. The empire he tried to steal had crumbled to dust, while Liam's firm had soared to unprecedented heights of success. But the best part of Ethan's downfall wasn't the justice. It was the absolute, unshakable apathy I felt toward him. He no longer occupied a single inch of my mind. Liam threw the blankets off, stepping out of bed with the kind of effortless grace that always made my mouth go slightly dry. "Don't move," he instructed, pointing a stern finger at me. "I am making the coffee today. You stay exactly there." I watched him walk out of the bedroom, my heart swelling with an emotion so vast it felt like it might break my ribs. The contrast between this life and my past was still staggering. Liam never let me shrink. He demanded my presence, my voice, and my comfort. He served me coffee in bed, he canceled board meetings if I had a cold, and he looked at me like I was the center of his gravity. 20 minutes later, Liam returned carrying a silver tray with 2 steaming mugs of coffee and a plate of fresh pastries. But he was fully dressed in a crisp white linen shirt and dark slacks, looking entirely too handsome for a lazy Saturday morning. "Why are you dressed?" I asked, sitting up and pulling the duvet over my lap as he set the tray on the nightstand. Liam handed me a mug, his eyes dancing with a secretive, thrilling energy. "Because you need to drink that coffee, pack a weekend bag, and be ready in exactly 1 hour. Marcus is handling the firm until Monday." My eyes widened. "Liam, where are we going?" "I have to finish the detailing on the massive canvas in the studio." "The canvas can wait," Liam interrupted smoothly, sitting on the edge of the bed and leaning in to press a kiss to my forehead. "I am kidnapping you, Noah. No paints, no board meetings, no cell phones. Just us." 2 hours later, we were sitting in the plush leather seats of Liam's private jet, climbing through the clouds above Chicago. Liam sat across from me, his long legs stretched out, his eyes locked onto me with a soft, affectionate gaze as I practically vibrated with curiosity. When we finally landed, the crisp, salty air of the Pacific Ocean hit my face the moment the cabin doors opened. We were in Big Sur, California. A sleek black car drove us along the winding, breathtaking coastal highway, the massive cliffs dropping off into the crashing, deep blue waves below. The ocean looked exactly like the colors I mixed on my palette. Liam's hand rested heavily on my thigh the entire drive, his thumb rubbing slow, soothing circles against my jeans. The house Liam had rented was an architectural marvel, a glass and timber masterpiece perched directly on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the endless expanse of the ocean. There were no neighbors, no paparazzi, no sounds of the city. Just the roar of the waves and the wind in the pines. "It's breathtaking," I breathed, walking out onto the massive wooden deck the moment we arrived. The sun was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in violent, beautiful strokes of orange, violet, and gold. I felt Liam's solid chest press against my back, his arms wrapping securely around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, looking out at the horizon with me. "I brought you here because it looks like your paintings," Liam murmured, his voice incredibly gentle. "The first time you painted the ocean in Emma's spare room, I knew I wanted to bring you to the real thing. I wanted to see you standing in front of it." I leaned back against him, closing my eyes and listening to the steady, powerful thumping of his heart. "It's perfect, Liam. Everything is perfect." We spent the afternoon completely disconnected from the world. We walked along the secluded, rocky beach, letting the freezing Pacific water rush over our bare feet. We drank wine on the deck, wrapped in heavy wool blankets, talking for hours until our voices grew hoarse. We talked about the future, about adopting a dog, about buying a house outside the city where I could have an even larger studio. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, setting the ocean on fire with its dying light, the air grew chilly. I pulled the wool blanket tighter around my shoulders, turning to look at Liam. He was already looking at me. The casual, relaxed demeanor he had carried all day had suddenly vanished. His jaw was tight, and his striking blue eyes were blazing with an intensity that made the breath catch in my throat. He looked nervous. Liam, the man who commanded boardrooms and tore down corporate empires without breaking a sweat, was actually trembling slightly. "Liam," I asked softly, my heart suddenly beginning to hammer against my ribs. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Liam breathed, stepping closer to me. He reached out, taking the blanket from my shoulders and letting it fall to the wooden deck. He took both of my hands in his, gripping them tightly. "Noah, exactly 14 months ago, I walked into an apartment and found you dying on a kitchen floor. It was the most terrifying moment of my entire life. My breath hitched at the sudden, heavy shift in his tone. I thought I was too late, Liam continued, his voice cracking slightly with the raw emotion he was pouring into the space between us. I thought I had waited too long, kept quiet for too long, and that I had lost the only person in this world who ever made my heart beat. But you fought. You survived. You let me carry you out of the dark, and in doing so, you completely saved me. Tears sprang to my eyes, hot and fast, blurring the image of the setting sun. You think I'm the one who rescued you, Liam whispered, stepping so close our chests brushed. But the truth is, Noah, you are the strongest, bravest, most breathtaking person I have ever known. You took the ashes of your past, and you painted a masterpiece. You taught me how to actually love someone. You gave me a home. Slowly, deliberately, Liam released my right hand. He took a half step back, and right there on the wooden deck overlooking the crashing Pacific Ocean, the billionaire CEO dropped down onto one knee. A choked gasp escaped my lips. My hands flew to cover my mouth as the tears finally spilled over my eyelashes and tracked down my cheeks. Liam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. He flipped it open. Inside wasn't a cold, heavy platinum trap like the one Ethan had given me. It was a band of brushed, warm gold, embedded with a single deep blue sapphire. The exact color of the ocean, the exact color of Liam's eyes. I don't want to spend another single day of my life just calling you my partner, Liam said, looking up at me, his own eyes shining with unshed tears. I want you to be my husband. I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel cold, or ignored, or invisible ever again. Noah, will you marry me? For a second, the entire world stopped spinning. The roar of the ocean faded. The wind stopped blowing. There was only him. Only Liam, offering me the world, offering me his entire heart, without asking me to shrink, without asking me to change. Yes, I sobbed, dropping to my knees right in front of him on the hard wooden deck. Yes, Liam. Yes. Liam let out a ragged, breathless sound of pure, unfiltered relief. He slid the beautiful gold and sapphire band onto my left ring finger. It fit perfectly. It didn't feel heavy. It felt like a promise. It felt like flying. Before I could even admire it, Liam's large hands framed my face, and he kissed me. It was a kiss that held the weight of 1,000 silent vows, a desperate, beautiful collision of two souls that had fought through the absolute darkest hell to find the light in each other. I wrapped my arms tightly around his neck, holding on to him as if my life depended on it, though I finally knew, deep in my bones, that I was entirely safe. The boy who had collapsed in silence was gone forever. I had found my voice, I had found my art, and sitting on a cliff at the edge of the world, wrapped in the arms of the man who worshipped the ground I walked on, I had finally, truly found my home. End of story. And that brings us to the end of Noah and Liam's incredible journey. Wow, just take a deep breath with me for a second. What an absolute emotional roller coaster. From the suffocating, freezing cold of Ethan's pristine apartment to the breathtaking, golden warmth of that cliffside in Big Sur. That was a beautifully satisfying ending. Let's unpack this together for a minute, because there is so much to talk about in this story. Noah's journey is honestly heartbreaking, but also incredibly relatable for anyone who has ever felt like they had to make themselves smaller just to fit into someone else's world. Ethan represents that deeply toxic, transactional type of relationship. He didn't actually love Noah. He loved the convenience of Noah. He loved having someone to iron his suits, someone to stay quiet, someone to be an accessory. It is terrifying how someone can condition you to believe that your pain, or your illness, is just an inconvenience. It literally took Noah collapsing with a deadly fever for that toxic illusion to finally, completely shatter. But isn't it poetic how the absolute worst, scariest moment of Noah's life was actually the catalyst for his rescue? And then we have Liam. Liam is the absolute gold standard, isn't he? What I love most about Liam's character is that he didn't just save Noah physically and then try to control him. He handed Noah the tools to save himself. He bought him the paints, he built him the studio, and he gave him a safe space to find his own voice again. Ethan wanted a pet, but Liam wanted a partner. Did you notice the difference in the rings? Ethan gave Noah a heavy, platinum ring that felt like a trap, but Liam gave him a warm gold band with a blue sapphire. The color of the ocean, the color of freedom, and the color of Liam's eyes. And that scene at the gala, when Noah stood his ground against Ethan's mother, and Liam just stood back, watching him with pure pride before stepping in. That is what real, unconditional support looks like. Now, I want to turn it over to you guys. I have a few questions for you, and I'll be hanging out in the comments reading your answers. First, at what exact moment did you realize Liam was completely and hopelessly in love with Noah? Was it when he found him on the kitchen floor? Or do you think he was secretly plotting to steal him away long before that? Second, what was the most satisfying moment of karma for Ethan in your opinion? Was it when Liam froze the company accounts? Or was it that intense coffee shop scene where Liam practically growled at him to back off? Let me know your favorite moments and your thoughts down in the comments below. I love reading how you guys interpret these characters. If this story made your heart race, if it made you angry, and if it ultimately made you swoon, please hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, but it helps the channel grow so much. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to your BL boyfriend and turn on that notification bell. You definitely don't want to miss our next video. We have so many more dramatic, romantic, and deeply satisfying boy love stories coming your way. And I want you to be a part of this amazing community we are building here. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and for feeling all of these intense emotions with me today. Your support means the absolute world to me. Remember, you deserve the kind of love that looks at you like a masterpiece, never an inconvenience. Stay safe, stay beautiful, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.